Alright, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to start this lesson off by giving all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith, and Shalom to all the sincere believers. Now, this is going to be a quick lesson, primarily based around division, and also the fact that that division is going to continue to lead to violence. So through the Spirit, I'm going to get some precepts, and Adawan Ratazah, you're edified. So Luke 12:51, suppose ye that I am come to give peace on earth, I tell you nay, but rather division. And that is exactly what we're seeing take place throughout the world, especially given this recent conflict between Israel, the U.S., and Iran. Like, you have some people, some citizens of different countries who are okay with what happened, and then you have other citizens that are absolutely not okay with what happened, and they're angry about it. Even here in America, in the U.S., there's people who are totally okay with that. They're okay with the fact that 1 minute the U.S. and Israel were having peace talks with Iran, and then a couple of hours later, the U.S. and Israel decided to strike Iran. And then, of course, on the other side of that, you have the people who are very pissed off about that, because, as I've said in a previous lesson, a lot of people here in the U.S., they understand that the U.S. is controlled by Israel. The U.S. really has no business being out there in the quote-unquote Middle East fighting a war against Iran on behalf of Israel. There's a lot of people here in the U.S. who have family members in the military who could end up getting killed in this war. So, there's a lot of people who are angry and they're scared. They're scared that their loved ones are going to get sent over there and end up getting killed just to fight on behalf of Israel. So there's a lot of division. I've seen a lot of TikToks about, in particular women who, their husband or their son is in the military, and they're scared because they're like, this whole war was unnecessary. Like, there was peace talks going on. So how did we go from peace talks to the U.S. and Israel striking Iran? Like, how did we jump so quickly from one thing to the other? And ultimately, it's because they don't understand prophecy. They don't understand that, like it says in Exodus 15:3, the Lord Yahweh is a man of war. The Lord Yahweh is his name. They don't understand that a man's goings are of the Lord Yahweh. How can a man then understand his own way? So Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump bombing Iran, that wasn't their idea. That was the Lord's idea. Because there is not going to be any peace in the Middle East, as people like to say. They want peace in the Middle East. There's not going to be any. Not until World War III happens. Or not until the end of World War III, when the kingdom of heaven gets established. Until then, it's constantly going to be violence. The scriptures say, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So those peace talks were never going to yield any genuine results. It was always going to end how it ended, which is with missiles being fired on people. And a lot of people are realizing that, this whole war thing, it wasn't to help the people of Iran. It wasn't because the U.S. so badly wanted to liberate and help the people of Iran who were under, a wicked regime. A lot of people believe that the whole reason why Trump got involved in this Israel-Iran conflict is because of the whole Epstein files thing, you know, trying to distract from that. And what could be a bigger distraction from the files than to go to war, you know? But then there's also a lot of division on that, on the whole files thing, because there's some people that claim that they don't care if Trump was in the files and all of that. And then there are people who very much care. You know, they're like, the country's being led by a very vile, disgusting person. Like, why would we be okay with that? You know, so there's just so much division happening. And the Lord is setting it up because there will be race wars, there will be civil wars, and there will be world war. Ecclesiastes 3:1 tells us to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And then you jump down to verse 8 and it says a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. We are undoubtedly in a time of war. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We are in a time of war. And there's a lot of people out here who are scared because they don't want this. But they don't understand that this is what the Lord wants. This is what the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, wants. It doesn't really matter what anybody else wants. What the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, wants is always how things are going to play out. And this division amongst the people in regards to all of these different events that are taking place between the whole war that's happening and the files in particular, you know, it's going to lead to more division and ultimately more violence. So it says, I got this definition here, division among people. It says division between people involves social, political, and economic polarization, often characterized as us against them, that separates individuals into opposing groups, driven by factors like conflicting ideologies. So there are people who out here who believe that it's okay for, you know, transgenders to go into girls' bathrooms and participate in women's sports. And then there are other people who are like, that's absolutely insane. Like, you can't be doing that. You know, inequality, you know, you have the men versus the women. Oh, you know, women want to be treated equally to men, even though the Heavenly Father didn't set it up that way. Men are above women. But Esau and his wicked self, he lied to these women and told them that they were equal to men, and he put them on the same level as men. Now women are out here living by themselves, and they have, you know, outside jobs and all of these things that make women think that they're on the same level, the same playing field as men. And that has created so much friction between men and women, because now you have these women running around talking about they don't need men, and they're just being very just wicked and evil, and, you know, just doing a lot of things that are going to get them unalived, basically. You know, so there's a lot of division going on in this world. It says, and tribalism. These divisions create disunity and isolation, weakening social cohesion. Yeah, because now you have, you know, men saying that they don't need women, and women saying that they don't need men, and, you know, like, nobody cares about each other anymore. Nobody looks out for each other. You know, like these women, they get themselves caught up and stuff out in the street, and then they're looking around for these men to protect them, and the men are like, no, you can't run around here and tell me how much you don't need me and how much you hate me and all of this and how much men suck and you wish we didn't exist and all of that. And then as soon as you get yourself into trouble, now you looking at me to come save you. Like that's not gonna work. So there's just so much division going on. And that division is just gonna further destroy society. And on a racial note, you have division in particular against brown skinned people against so-called white people. And then of course you have division within amongst the brown skinned people too. Because you have so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, Asians, Muslims, or like, Arabs, I guess you could call them, who are obviously looked at as less than by Esau. But yet you have a lot of these people who are still trying to get Esau to accept them. And it seems like a lot of people within these different, demographics are still they're clashing with each other over basically who can be the best slave for Esau. So you'll have Hispanics still disrespecting so-called black people, and vice versa. You'll have Asian people disrespecting so-called Hispanics and so-called black people, and it's just a constant back and forth, even though at the end of the day, all of us are looked at as nothing by these so-called white people. So it's like y'all are fighting with each other because you so desperately want to be the top coon for Esau. And Esau honestly wants to kill every single one of you, He wants to wipe all of you out. So like I said, there's just a lot of division. The rich versus the poor, the young versus the old, Christians versus Judaism. It's so much division just all across the board. Second Ezra 15 and 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Verse 15, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hand. And that's right. And that's when the race wars and the civil wars and even the world war is going to happen. People are going to be using guns and knives and baseball bats and broken bottles and basically anything that they can use as a weapon against each other. Verse 16, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their action shall stand in their power. And that's right. People are not going to listen to law enforcement. If anything, they're going to be more attacks on law enforcement. We've been seeing an uptick lately in police getting ambushed. Somebody calls the police, says something is happening, the police show up to the location, and then all hell breaks loose because the police were the target the entire time. Because these police officers, they're not here to help the people. They're here to hurt the people. They're here to keep the people in line, so to speak. And a lot of people are like, if the police and the ICE agents and all of that, if they're not following the law, if they're out here just being reckless and beating people up and kidnapping people and murdering people, then why the hell are the citizens following the law? And a lot of people are starting to think like that. And when people start thinking like that, when the people when the citizens start to realize that they outnumber law enforcement, and especially here in America where everybody and their grandmother has weapons, has guns, that's going to turn into a major problem. So, especially here in America, when all hell breaks loose, it is going to absolutely break loose. Because in these other countries, the civilian population doesn't really have guns. In a lot of these other countries, these other countries have very strict gun laws because they see all the shooting that goes on here in America, and they're like, "Nah, we don't want that." I mean, don't get it wrong. Violence still takes place in these other countries, stabbings and hit and runs and people setting people on fire and things like that. But it's not, you know, the one thing that they can say is that as far as shootings are concerned, that really doesn't happen in their country. But see, here in America, that happens every day, multiple times a day. All across America, people get shot. And the Lord is going to basically open the floodgates upon this place and upon the wicked people here in the US, and a lot of people are going to die by the sword. And like I said, the sword means basically anything that can be used as a weapon. But primarily here in the US, the gun is that sword. Things are building here. Like a lot of brothers have said, America is just one giant powder keg, and the Lord is about to set it off. And I can see it. I go on TikTok, and like I said, I just see so much anger from both sides. Like, you see people that are okay with the chaos, and then you have people that are not okay. And both sides are very angry with each other. Because you have the one side that's like, oh, you guys just need to get with the program, stop resisting, just go along with the wickedness and the chaos that's happening. And then you have the other side that's like, no, we're not going to do that. This is crazy. You have the whole files situation, and you have people that are like, all those people in those files need to be thrown in jail, you know? Like, they're disgusting, vile people. They need to be locked away. But then you have the other side that genuinely doesn't care, because more than likely in some capacity they themselves are also participating in that disgusting, vile wickedness. And then, like I said, this most recent situation with the whole Iran thing, the whole conflict that's now going on out there, and the fact that a lot of US soldiers are about to die fighting in a war that a lot of people feel they shouldn't be a part of, because Israel keeps getting themselves into conflicts with Iran or other countries, and then they can't back it up. So then they send in America to basically do their dirty work. So there's just so much division, because there's people who don't want to lose their loved ones because of some war that they feel America never should have gotten into. And then you have the other people who are, die hard for the military and for this wicked government. And they're like, yeah, send the soldiers over there, bomb everybody. Yeah, America's better than everybody. And, they don't understand how wicked what America is doing is. And it's not, and even if they did understand it, they don't care. And it's mostly these Edomites who think that way, because Esau has always been a warmonger. He's always been a violent, person, a violent nation of people, these Edomites. So It comes as no surprise, at least to me, and I'm sure to all you sincere brothers and sisters out there, that these Edomites are cheering on. Well, not all the Edomites, but a lot of Edomites are cheering on what's happening because they feel that that shows their dominance over these brown skinned people. You know, dropping bombs on them, blowing up schools, killing little girls. You know, and all it's doing is causing more people to look at Esau like he's a POS, which he is. You know, he's a vile, disgusting, violent POS. And even other Edomites are starting to see that, and they're like, nah, this is too much. You know, you hear about the things that were going on on Epstein Island, and you know that majority of the people who partook in that were so-called white men. And everybody's just looking at them and they're like, yo, y'all are disgusting people. But this is exactly what the men of the Lord, starting, of course, with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, have been saying for decades. And everyone was like, oh, you're just being racist. It's like, no, they're telling you exactly who these people are. In Job 9:24, it says the earth was given into the hand of the wicked. Who's running the world, basically? Esau, the so-called white man. They're the only ones that have the money and the resources to go throughout the world and bomb people and colonize lands and create all of this damn chaos. They are the wicked. And everybody's starting to wake up to that. And it's causing division, which is going to turn into violence. Or turn into more violence, I should say. And this is all a part of the Heavenly Father Yahweh's plan. Division and violence. And it's a beautiful thing that those of us of the hopeful elect are alive to witness these scriptures play out. That we're alive to see the will of the Lord being done on earth as it is in heaven. And best believe, things are going to get worse. There is no peace. It's only going to be more violence, more chaos, more division amongst everybody. Family members, friends, co-workers, strangers, city against city, country against country, nation against nation. That's the way the Lord set it up, and that's exactly how it's going to continue to play out. So with that, I'm going to wrap it up here. In closing, I want to give all the praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim Rakakudash, the Wadi Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, for putting the spirit on me to do this lesson. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to all the brothers who are still fervently preaching the word in sincerity and in faith. And shalom to all the sincere believers. You know, all the Israelites who are scattered throughout the world amongst these other nations and now look like these other nations. You know, I hope that you all stay strong, stay safe, stay fervent, stay circumspect, stay prayed up, and Adawan Ratazah, which means Lord's will. Until next time, Shalom.